Hello and welcome to the Final Phoenix podcast. Today I have Savannah Peck back with me, and Savannah and I did a part one of this conversation where we talked about hiring a coach, be careful who you work with, what our definition of coaching is. And in that first episode, we also talked about some of the red and green flags of like hiring a coach. Like, is it a good fit for you? Are you seeing progress? So definitely check out that episode. And today, Savannah and I are continuing the conversation into, what if you are in this situation or how to know if you're in this situation? And then also, we want to give you some tips on what to do about it because Savannah and I had hired the same company and the same coach. And even though our experiences were a little bit different because of the time frame that we participated in the coaching, it ended the same way with both of us being very unhappy with our purchases and kind of jumping through a lot of hoops as to, like when you hire a coach and you hire help and you're really looking forward to having someone help you reach your goals. And when that backfires, how like heartbreaking that can be because, all of us were trying to show up, we're trying to do our best. We are also looking to serve other people. And so when we're on this trajectory to actually accomplish that, and then we're stuck with like, maybe a contract or losing, eight to $15,000 depending on what you invested in, and then also having to deal with like the procedures of your credit card company or trying to get a refund. Right? There's so much weight that comes along with just hiring somebody that maybe isn't the right fit for you. So we're going to continue that conversation, like I said, and we're going to just give you some pointers and some tips and, fully transparent. We're fully compassionate for anybody that's going through this. So we really just want to, share what we've learned so far. So why don't you go ahead and say hi, Savannah? And thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. I really enjoy these conversations and just a chance to express what's happened so that other people can know that they're not alone if they're going through something similar. And, Laura and I touched on this on the last podcast a little bit, but, I was in a very vulnerable state. I had just, um, for a year, I had something happen with a businessman I was working with where I ended up suing him. And a year later, I was in a very vulnerable state, looking for a program, looking for a support system, looking for a community, looking for guidance on like what path I should be really taking because I had these ideas in my mind about what I wanted to do and what I wanted to create and the service I wanted to provide for people, but it's like I didn't have the dots connected. And so I remember I actually cried. I was crying when I saw this program's method. And, you know, I thought, wow, this is what I've been looking for. And I started crying because I wanted help so badly. And I was in such a dark place. And I thought, okay, am I going to make this investment, which is almost 10,000 Canadian? And I was crying because I was in this push and pull with myself of feeling such stuckness, feeling so confused about what path I should go on after what had happened. And also like a worthiness, like, am I worthy of spending 10,000 on myself? And that's why these things are so prominent in our lives when these things happen, because if I hadn't been doing the personal work on myself, or if I didn't have the right support system, if I didn't meet Laura, for example, I could have went down an even darker path from what happened with this investment. So I went from, my trust was broken with this businessman I was working with. And then now I invest 10,000 into another businessman that completely crumbles. So it felt like, in a sense, it felt like 2 years of my life wasted. And if I didn't have, a mom I was super close with, or like I said, meeting a few other people that were going through a similar experience, I might have blamed myself for the stupid investment. And so this is why I love this conversation, because we're kind of going to weave in and out of what to look out for and the things that happen, but also the deeper lessons that can come from it.
Yeah, yeah, well said. And one of the things we also talked about in that first part is how when some of us started to notice that we weren't really getting what we paid for, we started speaking up in the community, and it was very frowned upon. So posts were deleted. So there was really no encouragement of speaking to the community about what you were going through. So anybody who is like feels silenced, like I just recommend find someone to talk to, speak up, find a way to just start asking questions because sometimes we are in the wrong, right? Sometimes we're having a bad day, and sometimes like others are having a bad day and they miss appointments or they didn't wake up on time. Like we get that life happens. And honestly, that was the excuse that I was kind of giving this individual was like, oh, life must be happening. And I'm okay with that, right? But the problem that arose is like they weren't really telling us why things were changing and why appointments were disappearing and why they were deleting our posts when we were really just trying to find out what's going on and how we can support this company and this individual who we really want to learn from because we saw it as valuable. But there was really no support allowed um, in that sense. And so, Savannah and I were really lucky to be like, wait a minute, like something's not quite right. And we agreed on that. And we're like, well, what should we do about that? But that said, right when I noticed it and I decided like I'm learning something, but I can't really use anything that I just paid for. I noticed that the marketing was so good that I thought I was getting something else, and that's great. Like if you could market a product that great, then amazing. But once somebody gets into the program or the service, if it's not that great, it's going to be very obvious. And that's kind of what, personally I noticed. I was like, I was marketed something and this isn't it. So great marketing, bad service. I'm out of here, and I started asking for a refund and I consistently just asked for a refund. I think it took 5 months to get a refund. Um, and, luckily for me, it wasn't like a dire situation, but I did invest, I think it was over close to $7,000 US. And so, um, had I not been in a okay situation, that could have been devastating for me, and that's why we're having this conversation too, is because not all of us are, able to just put that money on a credit card and just be like, okay, we'll pay it all. Like interest rates are ridiculous, right? Like borrowing money from individuals so that we can invest in ourselves or like this is our final solution. Like we are really putting our trust in people. And when the trust is broken and the service is broken and there's no, professionalism from the company and just really no communication, like how devastating that could be to someone who is like really trying to help other people and help ourselves succeed. Um, so, Savannah and I think maybe we'll just talk about how, um, as heartfelt and as responsible as we can make this conversation, because we are both responsible for making the choices that we made, but it doesn't make it any less challenging, even when we shine a really bright light on it and say, we learned a lesson. Like at the end of the day, it's hard, right, Savannah? Like you had to go through a lot of things just to get your money back and just to be able to close the door, right? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So, when I first realized what was going on, it was around the same time as Laura. And so thankfully, we really had each other to kind of encourage each other, right? And I wasn't as lucky. I don't know if luck is the right word, but I was a little more outspoken, I would say, in the community because I really had enough. Where Laura had asked, you had asked for a refund a lot sooner than I did. And so I had been in the program longer. So technically, I had been way past the timeline of asking for a refund. And the reason for that is because I am a trusting person. And they kept saying the new features are coming, the new features or the new training is coming. And I just kept holding on, right? And when I finally really did speak up in the community, I used ChatGPT. I love ChatGPT. It helped me take my some of my emotions out of it. And I started saying, I'm not getting this. I'm not getting, I listed about four different things. And that's when I was removed from the groups. And that just, made my blood boil even more, where that's when I called my credit card company. And it took 3 months for my credit card company back and forth. I, it's, I almost feel this sense of embarrassment of how much time and energy this took for me to gather all the documentation, the screenshots, and really laying out a case. Like I was a lawyer, right? A case of he said this, I said this, he said this, I have this. So constantly having each little rebuttal for every single thing that he's saying I got, for showing the proof. So that took like 15 hours, believe it or not. And sometimes when you're so stressed, things take longer, right? Because you're not in a flow. It's like it's so irritating that you could be also making things longer. And so it took me about 15 hours to do all of that documentation and back and forth with the credit card company, like hours on the phone. And so that's where I could learn a lot too, that if I would have listened to my intuition a lot sooner, it was about 3 months into the program, I was really starting to feel like something was off. And I put my whole coaching on hold because I thought it was me. I thought I was the problem. I was blaming myself. Why does this feel confusing? Why does this feel hard? There's got to be something wrong with me. Why am I not getting the tech? And it really turned out that the coaching was not good coaching. We discussed this on the first podcast of like what coaching actually means. And, it wasn't truly what coaching is. And so all that being said, 3 months, and believe it or not, it still energetically doesn't even feel closed completely because my credit card company also failed to give me the final email saying this is now closed. You can move on with your life. And I still haven't gotten that email, and it's very strange. So I'm taking this time to also go inside myself and talk to myself and forgive myself as well, that hey, you're human, we're just learning, like, be easy on yourself. I was in a vulnerable state, and when you do that, when you have more compassion, it's like, oh, you feel like you can breathe a little bit. And so that's where I am right now. I'm having a lot more compassion, and it looks like I've gotten about 4,000 Canadian back. Like I just converted to Canadian in my head, but so almost half back. And so that is a win for me, because it's better than nothing. And I too wasn't in like dire need of it, thankfully. But that is still a good chunk. I could go buy a new computer with that, right? I could go buy a new phone. There's a lot of things you can do with $4,000. So, but yeah, and then a little point I'll bring up since we're on it. After 3 months of dealing with this refund chargeback with my credit card, because they refused to respond to my emails, just completely ignored me, I get a charge from this company for $1,000 just a few days ago. And the $1,000 was for a renewal of their yearly subscription to the software. And we mentioned this on the first podcast, but the software is clunky, is slow. There's other softwares out there. I don't think I mentioned, but Gamma is like one of my new best toys. Gamma is incredible for creating presentations. And so if anyone's looking for a software that's, $15, $20 a month, actually $8 to $20 a month, they have just incredible AI that creates your presentations and documents and anything visually that will really help you stand apart, and that is so user friendly. And so luckily I had found that software to kind of help ease me out of the transition. And so my head was so in the sand with this one company that I wasn't looking at other things out there. And so it was pretty incredible that they charged me $1,000. So they didn't take me off the renewal. And so these are things that we wanted to bring up too about professionalism. And when they responded to my email a few days ago, I was I was livid, and I used ChatGPT again to really take my emotions out of it. And I let them know that this is just really unacceptable. And the first customer service person responded saying, we're refunding you. There was no apology, no basic common sense or courtesy to say, we're sorry about this inconvenience. And that's a huge red flag, is just absolutely disregard for anything. And the second customer service person, after I responded to that email saying, wow, no apology, nothing, and still ignored the 3 months. This is again after investing almost 10,000 Canadian, being completely ignored for 3 months. And I brought all of that up again. So not only did you ignore me for 3 months, but you went and charged me again for $1,000 after I've been, fighting for this refund. And then you didn't, there's no acknowledgement, apology. Then the second person apologized saying, we are sorry about this inconvenience. The charge is going to be refunded in a few days, but completely ignored everything I said in that email again. So it's like when you're expressing yourself over and over again, and there's no accountability, no acknowledgement, it's it's enough to push some people over the edge. And because I'm doing so much personal development, and because I have people like you, Laura, to talk to about this, I'm reminding myself to go back into looking at the big picture of life, looking at, okay, what is these lessons trying to teach me about myself, and what are these triggers trying to teach me? It always goes down to self-worth, or a feeling of not good enough. And that's where I can have compassion for myself. So that's I kind of went on a few tangents there, but yeah, that's been my experience with getting the refund. And
Yeah. What
that's sweet.
Yeah, like as you can hear, it can be pretty like extravagant. That's why we want to help other people avoid this by saying like, yes, listen to yourself. And you know what? If you ignored yourself at any point in your life, especially when it comes to hiring a coach or asking for guidance, or man, even any kind of relationship you entered into, you do, you know, you do have to forgive yourself, right? For maybe not trusting yourself, and then rebuild that trust with yourself, or just acknowledge like, hey, I always know what's right for me. I think it's a reminder for all of us when we listen to ourselves and ask, is this a right step for me? And not blaming ourselves or pointing a negative light on ourselves because we have an opinion about something, and also this particular company, Savannah and I were talking about, like, we tend to take things personally because like I knew that it wasn't about me, because the amount of like disassociation from the clients from the very beginning was very obvious. I felt like this business specifically had a lot of moving parts, but nobody really talked to each other. And I did tell them like my recommendations, because I live in a world where, if someone tells me something, I'll see if there's any truth in it. And if I have a bad review, or if I have an unhappy client, that is where I'm going. I want to go towards that and say, what can I do better? Or what is your experience? Like, this particular company uses great reviews, which, we're still under the impression that they probably aren't all true. And that's a different story in itself. But, um, we really do want to go towards unhappy clients and ask them questions. We don't ignore people, right? We're like, let's talk about your experience. And I do that even after a call. Like, I'll do a free call and I say, how was that for you? And because I want to build, and I want to build something that serves people. So when we're ignored and we tend to take it like personally, or like, we did something wrong, it can feel really terrible. And that's on top of the setbacks in your business, the setbacks in your financial stability, the setbacks and other investments that you want to make, and then obviously just picking up and pivoting to a different direction. We want to do that as quickly as we can. Obviously, we don't want to live in this energy longer than we have to, but some people are continuously shown this again and again and again because they are, and I speak, I'm going to say this on behalf of somebody that I had a conversation with recently, and that is they're so traumatized by like the online marketing world because or maybe emotionally weighed down because they've been investing so much money in learning, but nothing has really paid off, right? And this particular person that I'm speaking of has just been in the industry for so long and has been through so many of these situations that she hasn't even really had a chance to heal from any of it, right? So, and the more we are subjected to that, the the louder that noise gets and the quieter we get, because then we think that we can't trust ourselves, right? So we want to say, hey, like if something feels wrong, listen to yourself. If something feels off, if any of the red flags that we brought up in our first part are prevalent, or if you have questions, like you don't have to make a decision on a coach or, a certain person in your life right away. Like you have time, you have space. And if anybody's pressuring you into anything other than that, then definitely ask a friend, reach out to somebody and just, do your best to tune into what your intuition is saying. It's usually a yes or a no or a, hey, let's just put this in the garage for a while so we can stew over it. Um,
Mhm.
right. But Savannah, we talk about too the, our expectation of like, being genuine and compassionate as coaches and how that seems to be lacking in a lot of spaces, and how we and I, Savannah and I, we just had a conversation about like not everybody is as genuine as us, not everybody is as compassionate, right? Not, and coming to that realization, not everybody is as professional, not everybody cares about their clients, right? But what is your take on, because I know that you do. Like it's very clear that you do, because if you didn't, things like this wouldn't bother you, right? Like these things wouldn't bother us if we just didn't care about people, right? So what do you want to add to that aspect of just being heartfelt and caring about people?
Mhm. Yeah, and what I'm noticing about coaching too, and being heartfelt is, there's coaching because I've had a coach where it's more mind coaching. Like you really have to know what you're signing up for, right? And I knew that the coach that I was getting at the time was was for like mental clarity. And that was really helpful. He was actually an amazing, amazing coach. And that's all it really was. But this kind of coaching, when it comes to like marketing and strategy, I think what's really missing is more of the implementation part, like more of the guidance on how to actually implement. And yes, there's still some high level of mindset involved for sure. And believing in the person maybe more than they believe in themselves yet. Because like as we know, they might be scared to speak or speak on camera, or and that does require a little bit more mindset as well as implementation. Like take out your camera and this like step by step little guidance on like exactly what to do. And I think that's where the compassion is lacking, is that these coaches assuming that we're kind of all at the same level, especially coaches like the ones we invested in, which was group coaching, and people are at all different levels. And that's where I think this company is messing up because they're just taking on everyone. And it's more about sales. It's not about is this person a good fit for our business? And so that's where the compassion is lacking, I think, is when it turns more to sales and less about where is this person really at? Can we really help them with where they're at? Um, and is it going to be a good fit for both? Because if this coach really knew where I was at, then she would have known that, yeah, this person needs more help with the implementation part, a little bit of mindset sprinkled in, but it actually comes down to do this, do this, do this, and more help with that regard. But maybe someone else on the call needs more mindset. So it became very vanilla, very just whatever the coach, like it was just, we'd come on and you would have to have your questions pre-written, and it would just be like, how do I export my thing? And some questions were as simple, like tech questions. And so it was very mixed match. The energy was very mixed match. And so that's another thing, that if you invest into coaching and you feel the energy is very mixed match right off the bat, I think that right away is something you need to take a really deeper look at, because how is it going to really benefit you, right? If you can feel like the coach doesn't have this much compassion for you, it's just show up, have your question answered. Oh, you don't have any questions, see you later, bye. And
Mhm.
so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially if you're showing up in a space and you're not really getting anything out of it. Like that was the big thing for me. Like I would show up and I would listen to questions, and some of them were mindset and some of them were how-to application. But at the end of the day, it wasn't even like a podcast I would spend time listening to. At the end of the day, I wasn't really learning anything. And that's what I noticed about the calls is like I don't really know what questions to ask, but I don't really want to listen to this either. So I feel like even if like my personal opinion is there are going to be some people that are in the same, looking at like a scale or like a sliding scale. I feel like our avatar and who we help is going to be in some kind of like gap in that spectrum of where they are on their journey. And there's going to be some mindset stuff that applies and doesn't apply to those people. There's going to be some how to, and application and implementation in there as well. But the cool thing about that is that everybody can kind of help each other when it's allowed, right? And when they're like, oh, I did that. This is how I did it. Um, so I would just go back to saying, like, if you're in some kind of group coaching and you're not getting anything out of it, then that's a pretty telling thing that like you probably aren't going to be progressing as fast as you want to, right? Like every time I show up for a group coaching, I'm like, now, when I present group coaching, I want to make sure that it's applicable to the people in the group, right? And we're all learning from each other always. Um, so yeah, that's my thoughts on
Mhm.
that.
Yeah, and something that you said too about questions, like, I have a neuro-linguistic programming certification, and the biggest takeaway for me from that like 2-year program was everything comes down to the question that we not only ask ourselves, but other people. If we're asking, they say there's no bad questions, but there really is different levels of questions. So if you ask someone, a closed end question, a yes or no question, is the sky blue? It's like yes or no. Compared to if you know how to ask the right question, you can get a completely different answer out of somebody and out of yourself. But you need to be skilled at knowing how to ask questions. And so when you invest in a coaching program, oftentimes you're there because you need help. So you don't even know what you should be asking because that's what you're there for. And so when these high ticket coaching are set up where you're supposed to ask them the question, I think that's actually sometimes backwards. I think, yes, of course, questions will arise out of us, but it should really be the coach asking the questions because they're more skilled in that domain. They should be the ones with different levels of experience to be able to get that answer out of the person, and also for them to discover the answer on their own, right? To not always just give the answer. But I think that was something I wanted to, that you helped jog my memory was, you know, expecting these people to have the questions when really they don't have the experience to even ask the right questions to get the right answer.
Yeah, and we talked about that a little bit in part one is when like personally, I like to give a lesson at the beginning so that it can jog questions for people, like start the discussion. What are we even supposed to be talking about? And then people can kind of pitch in from there. But one of the things that I noticed is I found myself typing up an email as to, oh, here are some tips that I would give this business that I paid a lot of money to teach me something that I apparently already knew, right? Like customer service, or they weren't teaching customer service, but I already knew like really good customer service. I already knew really good communication with individuals. Like there was so much that I already knew as when it comes to like business building, that I actually found myself giving them tips. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm not going to give them this free advice. I'm not like, if they ask me, and I did set up a call with one of the coaches and I did say, here's what I see. And she was like, I 100% agree with you. But then I was like, wait a minute, now I'm working for them, and it's different. I do want to reiterate and highlight the fact that it is different if they're like, hey, let's figure out how we can be an outstanding company and provide great customer service. Like, where did we go wrong? Like, let's be a team here. And there was just none of that. And in fact, I have still to this day not gotten any communication back from, I got my refund. I've never got a, I'm sorry. I've never got a, hey, let me call you and see. We want to be a good business. We really rely on our negative experiencers as to how we can, make things better. I still to this day have not received anything, and I highly doubt anybody's going to because that's just not the focus of the company, right? So there is just a simple thing as reliability and communication that can fix so much. So I know that Savannah and I are learning, um, you know, like if we have conversations with other people, like here's what you can look out for, here's what we experienced. But also I think we're relearning over and over again, like this is a problem in the industry. This is a problem that a lot of people are experiencing. This isn't okay with us. We would fix this across the board if we could. And like this is definitely showing us who we are not and what our business is never going to be. Thank goodness we're able to move from this genuine, heartfelt space of caring about people because we don't want other people to waste their time, their energy, their money, their hope, their trust in people, and then have to like emotionally recover to the extent that they have to, before they can just put their boots back on and move on with their lives. It really can be a huge setback. So, so that said, Savannah, I want to go into like, how do you know if you're in a situation like this? And I think we've probably covered a little bit of this in the first part, but we're going to go a little bit deeper into like, how do I know if I just hired someone that may not be a good fit for me? And what can I do about it? How long should I wait to do something about it? So the first thing that I'll say before I kind of go down my list here and we continue the conversation is like, if there's a feeling like we know things and we all know we're good enough. We all know that. We may put the benefit of the doubt on other people and we may, um, you know, bet on other people to help us and we might be wrong. But, and if there's any kind of inclination that you're like, I shouldn't have hired that person, I'm going to say, ask for a refund right away. you know, I know there's a 3-day law in this state. I don't know if that's nationally or federally, but I know that if you sign a contract within 3 days, you can get out of it and get your money back because you don't want to have to go through the long, potentially extensive process, especially if a company isn't operating well. They're gonna drag it on as long as they can, right? But if it's operating well, they tend to just be like, okay, I'm sorry it didn't fit. Let's work it out, type thing. So, Savannah, do you want to add anything to that before we go on with like, how do you know if you're in a situation like this?
Yeah, I think the how do you know if you're in a situation like this? What you said, like your instinct. And sometimes we're in a place where we don't trust ourselves, right? And that's kind of where I was, where I it's like I needed someone to trust outside of me because I had been struggling. I felt like I was struggling for so long on different paths, like I wasn't connecting the dots. And so deep down, I know I'm good enough and I know I'm smart enough. But it's like after so many experiences, we could we could kind of lose sight of our own gifts, like of our own strengths. And that's why we kind of we like open our hand, like, please help me. And I think the biggest thing would be is if you got something really valuable right away from them. Like I'm looking back now on those first couple, coaching calls, and there was nothing that really stood out. Like it felt so basic. It felt like I could have just watched a YouTube video. Like, and but because I wasn't fully trusting myself yet, I kept in that like, oh, it's coming. Like I need to learn more. I need to learn more. So I think if you feel like you just didn't really get anything, like an aha moment, or I think that should come from every call. Like that little aha moment could be worth 1,000. Like if it needs to be worth something right away. And if it's not, I think that is a red flag. And to go, wait a second, after 2, 3 calls, if I'm not really feeling like I'm that aha moment, I can't find a better word for it. I think that should be really taken seriously. Because just like anything, like it's the precursor to what's coming, right? I think the coach should be skilled enough to be able to really give you something that you didn't have before. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's a great way of putting it. And I do think too, if you might feel like you're in this situation if you are giving the benefit of the doubt too many times, because that's what I did. I gave the benefit
Yeah.
of the doubt, benefit of the doubt. I'm like, it looked like it was professionally run for a minute or two, and then it was like, I continuously asked myself, like, are they making a transition? Is there something happening in their lives? Is there, and I was constantly giving the benefit of the doubt. And after like the fifth or sixth appointment was completely removed from the calendar, and we paid for these too. I was like, okay, I'm done. Like, I'm done. And like, luckily, I did just listen to myself after that time, and I was like, okay, I can be compassionate and all these things, but like this just isn't getting any better, and I'm not progressing. Like Savannah said, I'm not learning something that I can even teach my clients at this point, because I don't even trust these people anymore. Like I don't even like, they're not consistent, they're not reliable. And after that trust was gone, actually that's the beginning thing for me, was I just lost trust so quick. And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, the other thing that I'll say is I should have, I'm not going to say I should have seen it, but I did, in the very beginning, I jumped on a call and they were like an hour late. Right. And I was like, oh, okay, just something's going on. And then after that, I had paid for an upgrade, and they had removed the part of the program that I wanted to be there for. They removed it. And I said, well, wait a minute, you can't promise this if you're going to remove that. That's why I'm here. And then they ended up like putting a really strange ad lib version of it back in that didn't make any sense at all. So I was like, that's just really weird, and then so that kind of pattern started, and I lost my trust, and then everything else kind of like the just snowballed, right? And again, I'm not saying this company isn't going through some major transition, but I'm saying that if you are a customer of something of somebody, even going through a major transition, that is no excuse for them to be able to treat you this way and to take your money and expect to, you're expected to get what you paid for. And if you're not getting what you paid for, there is no excuse, especially if they're not communicating with you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the next thing I was going to go into, is if there's a stark difference between what you were told you paid for and what you're actually getting, then you're most likely in a situation where, you might just be better off getting out of it.
Yes, exactly. And I want to bring up the fact that we did both do um like an 8 week thing, right? That with the coach, and we did get some value from that. We both agreed on that. And so something like that, that was a separate thing that they offered. And so people who invested into that, which I think was like 1500 or something, right? Um, so if you got some value from that, like that's good. That's good. And 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 I think that's where we were giving them the benefit of the doubt for the other things because that was okay, right? I got some things out of it, about maybe 6 weeks of it. In the last 2 weeks, it's like I didn't really, but it's tough, right? Because we give these benefit of the doubts, and then that's where we can kind of get into a bit of trouble because we're like, oh, well, that was good, so we'll wait for this other thing to come. And I think for the lesson for me personally would be to ask more questions. Doesn't matter what level of question it's at, right? Even if we're just ask more questions because then we're going to see the type of answers we're going to get. And that's going to tell us, okay, should we move on? Should we continue with down this road with this? Because I think if I would have asked more questions from the get-go about the software, like why isn't this here? Why haven't I got this yet? Right? I was just too nice. I think that's it. We're just scared. I don't know if it's scared to speak up, but it's in a way it's like when I ask myself, well, what was it? Why didn't I start speaking up sooner? It's like it's hard for me to even answer the question. It's like why didn't I think I'd have to sit with that for a little bit. And maybe it's a fear of people looking at me going, oh, like who is she? Like who? Because there really wasn't a lot of people speaking up. Or the questions that were asked, what did you find, Laura? A lot of questions that were asked in the community, they it was other members responding to people, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, it's interesting, looking back, I don't think I spoke up enough. And then it all came out at the end when the fire was in me. And so I think that's my lesson is and hopefully for other people that they could take away is who cares what other people are going to think, right? It's like these people, you're never going to really, these people in the program with you, unless you connect with someone like Laura and I did, these people aren't going to remember who you are or, even care. So just really, really get your questions out. Like if something's troubling you, I think that would have saved me a lot. It's seeing the responses sooner, seeing the lack of compassion. I would have been starting to question them a lot sooner. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something that, I feel like when we're green, right? When we're entering an online space of coaching, like a lot of people just don't know what to expect. They don't really have a standard of what is
Yeah.
okay for them because they are new. They are like, I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to start this online business. I'm going to go hire this coach. It's going to be everything that I need. And then, they just don't even know the red flags and they don't really know where their own boundaries are because they just haven't learned them. And I think that that's something that luckily in my own experience, I do about three benefit of the doubt, right? And then I'm like agitated, and then I look, is it me, is it them? And then I'm like, I know where my boundaries are before I speak up. But even then, we do talk about this in part one too, but when I had a conversation with a salesperson that sold me this coaching, I did ask questions and I said, is there anything else I need to buy after this? No, it comes with absolutely everything. Is there anything that it doesn't come with? No. Can I white label the software? Let me check, right? That should have been a red flag for me right there is that they actually had to email somebody and get an answer on what I was even getting. And I was like, that's weird. And after I logged into the software, it was very obvious to me that I couldn't use it the way that they were trying to sell it. And so there was just a lot of things there, but even sometimes I feel like when we ask the right questions and they're answered in an untruthful way, like we can't really take responsibility for their dishonesty, honestly, right? But we can take responsibility for like What about those first three boundaries that I let them cross, right? Because I did do that. And then I was just finally like, I don't have time for this. Like, I literally don't have time for it, you know? I don't have time to sit in the emotion of it. I don't have time to even, like, I don't, on a vibrational level, I didn't even want to associate with them anymore after that. I was like, okay, I'm done moving up in the world, right? And then, let's look towards the new present future, right? But yeah, I just feel like too, if you are listening to this and you are green on the online space or hiring a coach, definitely find someone with some experience to talk to and say, hey, this is my goal. What do you feel like? You know, is this a good direction for me? And that's if you're not sure what your intuition is telling you, right? Because your intuition and your feeling is going to be so like, does this resonate with you? It's either a yes or a no for me at this point, right? Like I pretty good at that. So I just recommend tuning in and calling on a friend, you know. But the other thing, Savannah, we talked about is as far as to know if you're in a situation like this is you feel stuck and you're not sure how to get unstuck. And I liked this reflection because a coach's job is to say, "Hey, let's get you unstuck." Right? Let's find out why you're stuck and then let's get you out. I mean, that's my opinion. And that's what I do for
Oh,
my clients.
yeah. Yeah, no, and that is like that is one of the most beautiful things too, is when someone hires you to get them unstuck and you truly want to help them get unstuck. And so it just comes out of you to ask the questions as a coach, right? It's like you actually want to find out. And I want to just touch base on what you said about a standard, because a lot of people coming into this, it's so true. They have nothing to compare it to. And that's why I love that we're doing this, because hopefully it's going to give those people who have nothing to compare it to, we're going to be that comparison for them. We're going to shed light on what a standard is. Like, and that's something that I've learned from this whole experience is, I hadn't invested in high ticket coaching for marketing. I'd invested in it for mind, right? Emotional mindset, but I hadn't invested in it for marketing and strategy and tech. And so now I have a standard, right? Now I have something to compare it to. And just like life, light and dark coexist together, we need to see what we don't want to be able to know, okay, this is what I want. So now that this has happened, it's given me, and I know you as well, just more conviction about our own work and about our own business and how we operate. And quickly going back to the, hiring a coach specifically, we were both on this call ready to invest in coaching with this salesperson. So if you're going to invest in a coach, make sure you're speaking to the coach directly. And if you're not, if you're speaking to the salesperson, either way, coach or salesperson, but you want to drill them with questions, because usually it's the other way around. They're trained, at least salespeople and coaches, to ask us the questions, right? To get as much information about us so they can kind of tailor that sales pitch to us with all the information they have about us. And we actually don't know a lot of information about them. And I think that's a key point, is it actually should be 50-50. As much information they know about us, we should know as much information about them, like their experience, how much they're using the program, how much they're using the software, all of it. Like use ChatGPT to really write you a list, and you don't end that call until you have all those questions answered. I think that would have helped save us too. If we would have found out that the salesperson never used the software, never had the coaching, never been on a coaching call, like this just blew my mind after, that he was the one to sign the contract with me, but I had never asked him, have you had the coaching before? What was your experience? What did you learn from it? Have you used the software? All these things now in hindsight, it's like common sense, right? But without a standard, without knowing, right, we have nothing to compare it to. So
Yeah, and it really did feel like I love what you said because it really did feel like a bad relationship. Like, when I one of the things someone said to me the other day, they're like, "Well, I just been through a lot and I just didn't want to jump in and hire you because blah, blah, blah. And I was just thinking, like, I don't let people just jump in and hire me. Like, this isn't a one-sided thing. Like, I need to make sure that are good together. Like, I want to make sure that I can help you. I want to make sure that you're going to progress in my presence. I want to make sure that I deeply understand what you need and that not only I understand that, I can, help you reach your goal. Like that's what I want to make sure of. And that is a relationship. It's not like I'm going to hunker down and pray to this God of a coach that's going to help me. It's like, no, let's make sure we fit. And it is a two-way street. And I think you're right. I think a lot of people are, especially when they're desperate or they don't have that standard, they're like, okay, I'm just going to hire this person. Right. And it's like, well, wait a minute. That person also, like a job interview, should make sure that it's a job they want and that you are a great fit for, that relationship and that reciprocation. Because that is where magic happens. Like that is the
Mm.
best coaching I have ever had. And I've had amazing group coaching too. I've learned from amazing students that I've been in a group with. So I think it really does come down to the evolution spiritually and even skill wise of a coach. But, when it comes to depending on their help, like it really is that reciprocated magical relationship that just
Mhm.
helps everybody like skyrocket to their goals and to prosperity, right? So that was beautifully said. But the next thing I want to talk about, Savannah, is the lack of support and attention. And I just wrote a note in here, lack of productive support and attention. Because I've also heard people who are like, yeah, I'm getting emails back, but like nothing is getting resolved. So, like, somebody in the company would be responding, but there's no real like productive support or attention. It's just like noise, right? They're going through the motions of making it look like they're trying to come to a conclusion and help. But really, at the end of the day, it's been like very little productive communication going back and forth on the part of the company.
Yeah, and I think that comes down to when this is just my perspective, of course, but s- looking at this company in particular, when the owner is so far removed, when they have no real contact with the customers or the clients, and they just leave it up to the support, the customer service, or the coach to do all that, it feels like there's so many breaks. Um, and this customer support person, especially that we were dealing with, was really not good. And as like even for me, I couldn't get into the software one time, and it took, I kid you not, like 2 weeks of back and forth emails to just be able to get into the software. And luckily, I wasn't, this was when I was just starting, so I hadn't built my client base or anything. But imagine if you can't get into a software where it's your business, right? So yeah, it's, it's really, it's a bit disheartening, right? Because you invest all this money and then the support isn't there. And I think unfortunately what happens is for some reason we start to blame ourselves.
Mhm.
Like, yes, we blame the support system, but we somehow bring it back on ourselves, like we're the problem or we're stupid or you know and oftentimes, yes, we have to take accountability, like we have to do the work. But if there's like this resistance with the company, like where we feel like the support isn't reciprocated, I think that's when to just take a step back, to ask for the refund or to do whatever it needs, right? To speak up. And my brain right now, it's interesting because when you're in the moment, it's so hard to see it. Just like a bad relationship. When you're in the moment and you know that you're not getting treated right, sometimes it's just so hard to leave. It's like this weird, like almost hopeful that it's going to
Mhm.
get better.
Yeah.
Um, and what just keeps bringing me back around is why it's so important to keep looking at other avenues, keep looking, like for example, this podcast. If I would have found something like this when it was happening, but my head was so kind of with goggles on. Like
Mm.
it's like I was so committed to the program, where like my loyalty was with this method because I invested this much money, that I didn't want to look elsewhere, when that was to my own detriment, is not looking elsewhere when you're feeling these feelings, you know?
Yeah, and that happens to us, I think, when we're really good students and we're like, I'm going to learn this, I'm going to apply once and for all. This is my savior, like because we're trusting and we are, we're doing the work and then we kind of get let down. But I wanted to touch upon some of the things that I noticed in the community is that when questions were asked, when I say productive support and attention, some of the responses were just excuses. And I never submitted certain things through the software because I always saw like, oh, I didn't get it, or oh, I didn't get like, did your message come through? Like there was a lot of that, like there's something wrong with the software. Oh, I was using the wrong version. I was using the desktop version and I was supposed to be on it was just like, I'm like, well, I'm not going to send somebody in. Like I actually end up sending the coach that I like hired an email and she was like, I never got it. And I was like, whatever. Like what I like, and that was really just a heartfelt email. And I was like, I guess it's not important. But you're right. We do circle back around and we think the problem is us. And I think it's because really just because there is no standard. So we're putting that trust in someone that we like look up to that seems to have a good thing going. And then and when it's not working out, it's like, oh, it is me. And unfortunately, they have a track record of saying you're not succeeding because of you. And sometimes that's true if we're not doing the work. And sometimes that's true if we're not speaking up and asking questions. Even if we're not coming to our coach or our friend even and saying, "Hey, I need help." Like that's a self-responsibility on us because I've talked to many customers and they're like, um even people that I've helped pro bono and they're like not moving and I'm like what's going on, I have to go to them to see how things are going, when I'm like, hey, reach out to me. You're not allowed to be stuck on my watch. I don't care if you're paying me or not. We're moving you forward, so tell me where you're at. Let's do a call and let's get you moving to where the direction that you want to go because I care about people. And if man, honestly, if you think it's a you problem, go to your coach and say, "Hey, I feel like I am sucking at this. I feel like, communication's a two-way street too, right? So we need to be able to speak our minds. And if we are still not responded to with productive support and attention, then you might be in a situation that you want to get out of, right? Because it could last you. Savannah, you said that you know someone who's been on, um, in this particular community using this particular service and this particular coach for years and they've been stuck, right? Like,
Yes, that's a perfect time to bring it up is for years. So this is it's disheartening because he's spent over 3,000 over the last few years. This was just for the yearly software. And so imagine being stuck. And also I had a heart to heart with him and he said he did think it was his fault. And that's why he kept on with the program. Because you go through these peaks and valleys of just holding on, right? And 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 these people are so skilled at coming out with these offers every few months or so that get you excited and their sound so good you don't want to miss out. And so the marketing is really on point. Well, I shouldn't say on point because a lot of it is actually misleading.
mhm,
So it's on point in the sense of where it's like hypnotizing. It
yes.
hypnotizes you. It's so on point to hypnotize you into it. But often it's non-compliant. And this person for a few years has been trying to launch his business and has not been able to, thinking that it's his fault, trying, still buying all these new offers, still being sucked into the marketing. And I originally, started working with him and he said, you know what, I don't want to be a part of this community and I don't want the software anymore. And I told him, I'll help you. I'll help you get your refund. And I have all the documentation if you need it, and And he was even scared to speak up after all of that time. Yeah, and I can, this happens in a lot of different areas of life, right? Where you're scared to leave the job that you absolutely hate or whatever. But he was kind of scared to speak up and ask for a refund. And once he did, I kid you not, the support person, which is actually the tech person as well, one of them said something along the lines, paraphrasing here, but said, we strongly advise you to look into the details of the software, look into the details before making a purchase of something. And so, with my help, I helped him construct an email saying, well, we strongly advise you to stick to what you're selling. Like if you offer something, you actually stick to actually delivering it. So don't tell us to look at the fine print when you're not even sticking to your end of the agreement. And so it's really shocking to see the condescending nature of some businesses, and especially this one particular, where they're actually narcissism. Again, going back to this is your fault, kind of, and again, they, as a final, I kept helping him to push for this refund, and they just emailed him back a week late, by the way. So this is how long things are taking, where he sends a response and they take a week to respond. And that when they responded, they said, we'll give you lifetime access to the AI credits of the software, meaning you still have to purchase the software, but we'll give you lifetime access to the AI, which when you buy the software, the AI comes with it. So two things, like one, you're offering a solution, you're offering AI credits, which he doesn't want. He doesn't want to use the software. And two, the AI credits actually come with the software. So what are you actually offering? So there's so much, narcissism mixed with condescending, mixed with like out of this world, problem solving that makes absolutely no sense. That is enough to make someone give up and not keep pushing because it's so frustrating and it's so time consuming. Like the back and forth emails, and it's a lot of energy. Like we only have so many minutes in the day and so much of where our energy can go, right? We're dealing with so many other things in life. So to deal with these like people that are just out to like just to drain you, and so yeah, that's been his experience too. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. I know a few other people that are still in the community and they have their business wrapped up so much in it. They are trying to separate themselves from the software, creating their own digital assets and not using the software as much so they really can separate. But there's some people that have been using the methods and are so deeply frustrated, but they feel like they're still going to hold on. And it's quite shocking actually that there's some people knowing everything that's going on, but they're still holding on by that thread.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's because people do invest and they do trust and they don't honestly most of the time even know where else to go, right?
Yeah.
So I want to say first that I've heard a few comments lately because I have a community and I've been inviting people into the community and they've said, wow, like I've just got out, like I've done communities, and when I heard the word community, I was just like, oh, I don't want to do that, but and they come into my community and they're like, wow, this is a safe space. This is totally opposite from what we experienced. And so luckily, personally, I've only been in that one community where, you and I experienced where we didn't really feel allowed or confident enough to speak up because nobody else was really saying anything. So it kind of made us question, like, am I just having a bad day? Like, are my expectations like crazy? Like, is my time Nazi coming through again? Because I'm very particular about certain things because I'm running on a schedule, like I have appointments all day and tasks to do. So, so that said, if you're not feeling confident in the community to speak up, then there's automatically trust issues there. There's automatically safety issues there, right? But we do have the responsibility to speak up. So reach out to your coach, and we're going to give you some tips here about, like putting things in writing and such here as we move forward. Um, but, a couple other things that I want to mention as far as like how to know you're in the situation is, if your concerns are deleted from the community platforms, if you don't receive responses to your messages or email, and if you do, they're not helpful. We kind of talked about that a little. The coach or individual pushes blame on you for not succeeding. They're not acknowledging their own canceled calls or appointments, if they're not reliable and not responding to your concerns in a heartfelt human way, like they're not understanding you if they're not responding to you, right? If you're
Mhm.
often confused by the information that you're given, if you've been in the program for 6 months or more and you've made very little progress and you're really questioning your decision, like that's another, like you probably are not in a space that's conducive for your own growth. And only you can know that. Savannah and I are not here to tell you what to do. We're just here to share our experience with you and some of the experiences that we've heard going through the marketplace lately. And hopefully people like her and I can change it because we are. I have the Soulpreneurs Prosperity Academy, and I know Savannah does digital startup assistance for people. You have a website, digitalstartupgrowth.com. But like we are hoping to create more of these heartfelt individuals and, heartfelt help, so that people don't have to go through this. But another thing is if you, we just want to say too that like you're not alone. There's a lot of I don't want to say bad coaches because I don't know that anybody is inherently intentionally like trying to be bad. They are just maybe not good communicators, not very good executors, not very good managers, not very good at just genuine, heartfelt communication, not very good at taking responsibility. And I don't think they're trying to intentionally do wrong. I just think they don't know. And because of that, it puts us in a really bad situation for our own growth, right? It kind of sets us back because we think that they have their stuff together and they just don't. So, we're not pushing blame here. We're just saying, like, honestly, don't spend too much time in a space that feels like this because there are amazing coaches out there. I can't, mention enough names if I were to just make a list of all the amazing people that I've met along my journey. And fortunately for me, this is the only experience that I've ever had like this. And it was just someone that was recommended to me because they were actually stuck in this program and they couldn't figure it out. And so I said, let me take a look and I'll see what I find. And I got in, I learned some stuff and I got out. I kind of realized that it was not a space for me. And we just really don't want anybody else to deal with this because we want to help individuals thrive and, step into their power and find out what your unique gifts are. Let's show those to the world. There is no time to be dealing with things like this. Like it is not acceptable. Um, when you can just ask around, like take responsibility, show up, speak up, find a community maybe that works better for you, etc. But Savannah, do you want to comment on any of that before we move into like what our tips are about what to do about this if they're like, oh my gosh, this sounds familiar?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that what I'm about to say is a bit of some tips, um, because, as you were speaking too, and it made me realize that like everything in life is a risk. Every single thing, like, you know, in a perspective, in a way, it's a risk. Like me moving to Mexico was a risk, right? Me staying in Canada where I wasn't happy is a risk. So investing into a program is a risk. And I think if we start looking at everything and saying, okay, everything's a risk, but staying in the same spot is a risk. So how about I start taking more calculated risks? And what does that mean? Well, for one, I think it comes down to documenting. So if you invest money into something right off the bat, you can start documenting everything. Get a little personal notebook for that specific investment and start documenting everything. So, and or if you want to do it on your computer, create a folder and start taking screenshots or start writing notes. I really wish I did that a lot sooner. And now I'm trying to get into the habit of doing that with more calculated risks that I take. Um, and that way, it's just like journaling. It's like getting it out of your head. And when you can see it visually, it will be able to show you more of like the red and the green, like what's standing out, what needs to be looked at a little bit more. I think I think that would be one of the biggest things is realizing that everything is a risk and that, okay, I'm going to just be calculated about this instead of just handing over my money and expecting certain things of them. I think expectation is okay and standards is good, but okay, as soon as those expectations are not being met, then that's when you say, oh, okay, you're more able to say this was canceled, this isn't what I'm getting, this is not what I'm getting. Wait a second here. And you could save yourself so much pain, right? And then you realize, oh, okay, this isn't working out. And it doesn't have to be this catastrophic or this traumatizing event because it's definitely been a big experience for me. And it could have been more enjoyable. Yeah, I think that's the right word. It could have been a lot more enjoyable had I done more calculations, right? So
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Just like documenting your experience, either good or bad, right? Because we don't want to move into a relationship like this is what they did today, right? But like just being noteworthy of mishaps because, patterns do exist in businesses. And even if you're noticing a lot of things, it doesn't mean that we can't learn from them and that they're still not amazing companies, right? Because we all do things differently too. So I like that tip, Savannah, to put, take detailed notes. And also, I would say, if you are working with someone, I'm always looking at how they operate and like what I like about their procedures and their standards and their businesses versus what I wouldn't implement. And I'm able to build my company by looking at some of these things like, oh, I really love this part of what they do. Let me implement that. But I'm going to do away with everything else, right? Like that also helps us create our own standard for what we want to provide other people too. And the other thing that I'll say is, when I signed up for this coaching, I wish that I would have recorded the sales call and it wasn't recorded. So I think we're going to recommend that like you just, get permission right then and there. Like if they say no, that's not a good response, right? But um because you want to make sure that you ask questions, you want to be protected. You do want to protect yourself, not in like a um obsessive way, but in like I just need to make sure that I'm investing, you know, whatever, however many figures you're investing into something, because some coaching is really expensive and you just want to make sure that you know what you're getting, especially if it's not, if it's a logical process, right? If it's soul coaching or something that is really hard to explain, you're going to have to go on your intuition and feeling alone most of the times. But if it's like, this is where we want to see you in a year as far as your individual success goes, I would, record the call, make sure that the contract is, obviously in writing and make sure that all of your interactions are in writing too. Luckily, I'm trained that way because I spent over a decade in the legal world. So I'm very used to email. I'm very used to documenting these things just naturally. Um, but yeah, Savannah, you also said take screenshots. If anything goes awry, it's a lot easier to have those. Because I remember when I was looking, right when I noticed something was a little off, I started saying like, "Oh, I know I saw that appointment on the calendar today, and now it's gone." And then I took a
yeah.
screenshot. I was like, kind of wishing that I had, done that sooner. But you don't know, right? So you got to do your best.
Yes, yes. And that's why I hope the right people will see this at the right time and will take some of these tips and really benefit from them, right? Because you feel like what's the word? I don't know why, but badass just came to my mind. Like you feel proud of yourself when you've got your ducks lined up, right? You're like, oh, I took a screenshot of that, or oh, I've got some notes here that I started. Like you feel good, like you feel organized, you're not just like a scatterbrain. Yeah, and so it might be it might feel like a nuisance, right? Like documenting but you'll look back and you'll go, wow, I'm so glad I did that. And to your point too about not all documenting the bad, documenting the good as well. And that could be used as content. That could be used as a written post or, hey, this is what I learned today. Or, and I wish I did more of that instead of being stuck in this like product creation, but you're not actually putting anything out to the world yet. You're just so behind doors, creating, building. And what they didn't teach enough of is to actually be marketing the entire time. Like be marketing, hey, I just signed up for this program. I'm going to bring you on the journey with me. Like that could have all been so much content, right?
Mm.
Instead of like trying to wait until the product was done. So that's another thing too, is if the program isn't teaching you right away, kind of like this is what I love about your TikTok challenge. It's like teaching you to just do it before you feel ready. That's what I think is so important with coaches too, is to encourage you to do the thing that you're scared of doing because that's what you need to be doing, you know?
Yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I honestly, that's probably one of the things that I learned just on my own journey is like we're never going to feel ready. You're always going to have to do the thing, right? And then you're ready to do more. And then it's just that constant cycle of, blasting through what you're not ready to do. And I've heard that from so many people too. And like they're like, I'm procrastinating and I didn't even know that I was avoiding it, but now I'm doing the TikTok and I didn't even know how much of a tool social media is just to get my message out there. So yeah, we just got to start now. Like if we are not starting right here, right now, then what the heck are we doing? Like we don't have
Yeah.
time for this. Like we don't have
Yeah.
time, right? To dilly daddle. If you're trying to get a message out there, the people that are going to hear it today are going to need it today.
Yes. And I listened to, I don't know if you know who Dan Coe is, but
Mm-mm.
he started with like 500 followers on YouTube and now he's got over 800,000. He's making about 4 million a year as a solopreneur. He's got maybe one person assistant. And I just read his newsletter and he's very philosophical and I think you would really like him because we have similar mindsets. And he said, I still feel like I don't know what I'm doing. And so it's so funny how just this human experience, we're constantly upgrading, we're constantly improving, we're constantly learning. But at each stage of our learning, we feel like we don't know what we're doing. We don't know what we're doing. We don't know what we're doing. But isn't it like this illusion? It's so funny. It's like right?
Yeah.
It's like the fact that he's at this level now of, you know, hundreds of thousands of followers on TikTok and Instagram and all of that started like, where everyone starts. And he didn't know what he was doing then. And he still feels like he doesn't know what he's doing. He's just at a different level of not knowing what he's doing. And so I think if we just be okay with, you know what, this is always going to be the feeling,
Yeah.
we can kind of have more fun.
It actually gets a lot more fun in my experience. And that's one of the things that I realized too with this particular coaching that we're talking about is I had like they were very clear of like this is what you have to do because I know what I'm doing and if you don't do this you're going to fail type of vibe and you have to do
Mhm.
this. And it was almost like reiterated over and over of like in a confident way too of like they know what they're doing. And I'm like that's really good feeling, but then after I learned all of this I was like I still don't know what I'm doing. And then I heard this inner voice and it was like confirmation started popping up. It said, you know you're on the path when the path disappears before you. And I was like, that's it. I know the path is gone. I have no idea what I'm doing. And I started showing up for my clients and I'm saying, you guys, if anybody tells you that they know what they're doing, they're lying. I don't even know what I'm doing because what I'm doing the only thing I know that I'm doing is I'm showing up, I'm responding to what shows up in my life, and I'm taking intuitive guided action based on my own guidance that I have tapped into internally. And that's guiding me to people, that's guiding me to situations, that's guiding me to opportunities. And I'm doing my best at doing that. But otherwise, I have no idea what I'm doing. And the cool thing about that is as long as I stay in that mindset, I end up creating bigger and better things than I would have if I had pretended to know exactly what I'm doing. So I'm creating
Yeah,
bigger things because I'm not attaching anything, right? And I'm teaching other people to do that too. Like, let's just forget all of it and let's see where this goes. But the education is important, right? The skill of marketing is important. All that high ticket stuff you learn is important. But let's
yeah,
erase all that now and let's tune in to your guidance and trust the fact that you have no idea where you're going. You have
exactly.
no idea what you're
And,
doing.
and it's such a beautiful thing when we put ourselves in that energy. It's like, wow, so much pressure gets taken off of us. And when you really take a moment to really think about this, it's like the goals that we have this weird expectation that we should know what we're doing, but we've never achieved the goal. So how it's impossible to know. So just to your point is all you need to do to get to that place that you don't know where you're what you're doing is to just keep showing up consistently by not know it's such a like an ironic um there's another word I'm looking for, but I can't think of it right now. But it's like, yeah, it's this ironic illusion that we're kind of living with, right?
Mhm. It's like you just know in the moment that you know what you're doing, and the
Yeah,
next moment you don't know what you're doing until you know what you're doing. It's kind of
yeah,
like that.
yeah.
I think I know what word you're thinking of too, but it's like a paradox almost.
Yes,
Like
yes,
yeah,
something
yeah.
like that. Yes, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. It's like what comes first, the chicken or the egg? It doesn't matter, right? It's like, but you do have to just trust. And I think for me that was the biggest thing was just trusting and accepting the fact that I don't have to know everything and that I don't know everything. And that's one of the most amazing things that allowed me to show up in the community that I have is for me to say, "Hey, you guys, I'm a researcher, I'm an investigator. I'm learning marketing, I'm learning the business world. I'm trying these things out. I'll come show you what I learned and you can apply it, but I'm always going to tell you to look back into your internal guidance, always. And then I get to see their progression too, right? I get to see them progress and say, hey, this is what I did. So we can actually have conversations instead of, here's a one size fits all solution that's going to make you $10 million in your, this year. Right. That's the kind of marketing that we're going. And we know that that's not true because we are spiritual, energetic beings. It can't be true because the future doesn't even technically exist. Right. And that's a different conversation. But
yeah.
but it really is something that's why I say in business and in marketing and when we're stepping into this power, what we are meant to do and what we in the ways that we can serve, it comes through us. It comes through us and we can't know. Like if we sometimes we have insights, sometimes we can create a vision.
Mhm.
We can create that amazing vision of what we're going towards and we can be flexible on the details and the vision will upgrade. My vision constantly upgrades. But it literally is birthing like through our energy system and coming into creation. And we can't see it on an intellectual level because it's not meant to be perceived that way. It is in
Yeah.
hindsight.
Yes.
It is in hindsight.
Hmm.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
everybody listening, just remember that if someone tells you that they know exactly, just ask them more questions. That's all I'm going to say. Ask them more questions because it may be true and it may not be true. But Savannah, so I just want to move on too about talking about, if when you're ready to move out of a potentially just, maybe it's a bad relationship with a coach or a service provider, or it's just not working. It doesn't even have to be bad, right? It doesn't have to be traumatic. You're just like, I paid for this thing and it's not working out. I do recommend, request a full refund in writing. I remember when I was first thinking about it, I was going to request half. I actually think I did request half because I was like, I learned a couple things and I felt kind of bad because I still wanted to, you know, um, offer some funds in exchange. But then I realized that I did some research and I said, a lot of what I learned violates the FTC. It's almost against the law. And I was like, well, I learned it. That's great, but I can't teach it to anybody else. So I was actually upset at that point because I had trusted somebody and they were misleading me. into what was even legal. So I just said, you know what? I don't want any association. I would just ask for a full refund. And honestly, I think that's up to the individual and up to the situation. But definitely don't be afraid to ask for that. And when you do, make sure everything is in writing. Again, you want to make sure that if it ever comes back to you didn't say this or this was said, that it's very clear as to what the communications were. And I give everybody that advice, no matter what you're in, put it in writing, no matter what situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Savannah.
Yeah, no, I just thought of, just like we set reminders on our phone for appointments, I just thought of it now. Imagine, investing in something, setting a reminder on your phone for 3 days later, checking in with yourself and like, how did you feel this purchase went? Because days and time goes by so fast, things happen, and just, that could be a little tip too, is setting a reminder on your phone to check in with yourself about this investment. Like how do you feel about it? Um, and and again, just documenting at that point as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great tip. It's a great tip. And then yeah, definitely, if there's a community, post your concerns in there. There should be people in the community that can help you, whether students or coaches. Just really make sure that you take responsibility for your own communications and look for the help that you need within the product that you purchased. But going on to the tips and tools that we recommend, we did say make sure you review the contract before buying. So make sure that, you are reading that and that you agree with it before giving someone money, because it's pretty easy for them to charge you, and then you're just stuck with this contract. Even if you say, I don't want to buy this anymore, it might be pretty hard for you to get your money back, right? So I like to practice that myself, even when it comes to my own clients. Here's the contract. If you're okay with it and it works, then you move on to paying. And then also to, have a friend review it. I love, Savannah, you said use GBT for everything. Like they can break it down for you if you need a day or two. Like if someone cares about you, they're going to give you time to do the diligence that you need to do to review what you're getting yourself into. So take your time, ask for, ask a friend for support or use GBT. Like, what does this mean if I sign this contract, right?
Yeah. Another point to that too, and I just thought about it now, was just recent in the last few days when I got that charge again and I sent them an email. I CC'd all the salesperson, the coach, um, and I guess two of the support people. I wanted the staff to see, and I also uploaded the document that I took 15 hours to do. I uploaded that document that I sent to my credit card company so they would actually see everything that I created for my credit card company to get that refund, because I wanted their staff to see the harm that they've done, and the lies and the misleading marketing. And I was shocked because I had a good vibe. I had a good energy from the salesperson. Like it almost felt like it could be a friend. Like that's how like trusting I felt with him. And I expected to get an email or something back being like, wow, Savannah, so sorry that this has been your experience. Like I'm the one that sold you this program, something, nothing, nothing at all from anybody. So I think going into it, we kind of have these goggles on, like, these drunk goggles on, where we're like, we're so needing help, and we're not going into it with, hey, let's get them to prove themselves to me, you know? And if I would have had that kind of hat going into it, like I want to see, let's get them to prove the program to me, instead of just going into it already being sold, like almost going into it kind of being excited without really knowing, without asking all those questions. Because imagine, he got this awesome commission and that's it. His hands are clean. And here I am sending this massive document showing, and once you see this document, you have to know, holy crap, she must have put some time into this. So to know that this person put all this time And then you can actually see what's been going on. And then to not even care to respond to the person, like, man, I am so sorry this happened to you. Because he could have. He's so far removed from the program and the coaching. He could have just said, I'm really sorry that this has happened.
Mhm.
And again, that compassion. But it was a big wake up call, that once a lot, not all, of course, but there's businesses out there that once they have your money, like they're kind of on to the next. So we have to keep that in mind, that there's good and light out there, right? And we might get that dark, and to be prepared for it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's well said, well stated.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. We always learn something, right? We're always learning, we're always evolving. So some other tips and tools. Ask lots of questions to know exactly what you're buying if it's not obvious or if it's unclear. We already talked about getting a copy of the sales call, not only recording it, right, but making sure that you have it
Mhm.
um, for reference, even. And then another thing is to get some feedback from other individuals in the program. Or, while you're there, if there's like a 2 week free trial or something, that is the perfect opportunity to jump in and just start making relationships and saying, hey, how do you like it here? I feel like a good business will allow that. Or just to encourage that, even like come in, meet some people, let's do a meet and greet, see if you like it here, have some conversations. And I do really firmly believe, like in my community, there's a feeling to it where you know, they feel like they're family. They come in and they're like, "Oh, okay. I understand what it is. We can thrive here. This is a safe space. We can ask questions." So it's very obvious because we do a lot of video calls, right? But if it's unclear, then definitely like just ask the members in the community, like, how long have you been here? What do you do? Have you progressed a lot, right? Because their experience is probably going to be very similar to yours, and everybody's different in their way of implementing and executing, but it'll give you some insights as to what you're getting into, and hopefully again you'll be able to test that out and have those conversations before you buy, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Exactly.
Yeah. And another thing that I want to say is I recommend to grab some basic info about marketing and business guidelines. I know that there's an author that put a really good book out about, how to be compliant with the FTC. I can't remember his name at the moment, but I think the book is called Don't Say That. And one of the things that book showed me, having a background in the legal world, is that it wasn't necessarily the laws, because I am pretty well up to speed on how to be a genuine human being, and using common sense and not making promises that I can fulfill, but also being very transparent, straightforward on my marketing. But if you read you could even ask ChatGPT, what are some basic things that I need to learn about marketing that's federally required, that is required in my state. And then if you are listening to somebody that's conflicting in any way, like that is just something that you can use to just back away from the situation before you even step foot into their house, right? Like you're like, okay, they're teaching me to do this. It's clearly something that I don't want to learn, because the other thing that I'm learning about some of these people that are coming to me for help with their business growth and their marketing education and implementing and stuff is unlearning all the stuff that they've learned. They're like, I was taught to do this, but I feel like it's illegal now. So what do I do? Right? They're having to take the eraser and recreate their education. So it's kind of, you can actually get a little bit ahead if you if you don't go down that path in the first place.
Yes. Yeah, and the guy who wrote that book, Don't Say That, he got sued by the FTC, and that's why he pretty much like pivoted his entire business and his entire life, because it was so detrimental, cost him millions and millions of dollars. And so now he's trying to really help warn people of compliant marketing. And it's so great because the digital marketing space and online marketing, high ticket marketing, we're starting to see because it's maturing so much and because of the amount of information and people starting businesses without experience or without proper guidelines, it's becoming like a little bit of like the network marketing industry where it's starting to show signs of like bad reputation because digital marketers or marketers, the way they're trying to market their service, it's it's um it's just got too many claims, right? It's not aligned with what they're actually doing. And so that's what's happening. And so this book is such a great place to start. And they've got a Facebook group too. I think once you buy the book, you get into the Facebook group. Um, I actually, one of my friends gave me the book. It was like the online version, the PDF, but I think I'm going to buy it because I want to get into the Facebook group. And so you can go, and if this is a great tip too, if you're looking to invest into something, you can, go and ask questions about their marketing. You can say, this is what they're saying I get. What do you think? And the group will actually respond. So I wish I knew about this sooner. But again, this is all beautiful lessons that we learn along the way. But yeah, he got sued pretty bad, and then he's dedicated his life now to helping others so they don't, get into any trouble with their marketing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I love that. And one of the reasons that I was so disappointed in this particular program that you and I are talking about that we purchased and we got, refunded is that I don't consider myself a marketer. I consider myself a teacher and an educator and a support system and a guide for people that are building heartfelt, soul-centered businesses. And I love to share what I learn. And when I realized that a lot of what I was learning was not compliant, like I had a feeling, because of the way that it was coming across. But when I realized it, I really had to go through with a fine tooth comb and say, what can I teach, that I learned? And some of it was effective and accurate. And some of it was just like I had to throw that entire education out. So this is really important for those of us who are marketers, or if you have an agency, or if you are teaching other people, because you could be potentially be teaching other people like things that are illegal. And that's where I was like, I think of everything that I was upset about, I was upset that that was the education I paid for, but I was also very grateful that the people that were in my small community at the time, I could say, um, here's how I'm going to change this one thing that I said. Here's what I change about guarantees. Here's what I say change about that. And I could be transparent. And they're like, oh, thank you. We're all learning. Um, and then, uh, and then the other thing that I love about that book, Don't Say That, is it is, like I said, it's almost like a guide. If you see somebody telling you to do something outside of those kind of standard guidelines, because it's the law, he's not making it up, right? Then you can see that it may not be someone that you want to learn from, because you do not want to run into being sued by the FTC and being fined, right? Like it's a big deal because the FTC can also completely cut off your ability to work in a certain area. They can say, oh, you do marketing? Not anymore. You got to go do something completely different now. They can require you to step out of your business and your area. So, but that said, I want to kind of move on to, if you are in a situation like this, should you involve the FTC or the BBB or the Attorney General's office? And I think particular, we're just going to talk about probably the FTC because it is a big offense to be reported to them. And I can't actually say like yes or no, go do that. What I can say is that um, it's an individual experience, right? When you
Mhm.
are, if anybody is done in such a way that is like, this should not happen to other people, then the FTC can't even intervene or make things right or protect consumers if they don't know about it, right? If they don't know about these marketers doing this, then they can't put a stop to it. And so I'm going to say for every one of us, it's 100% our responsibility to just decide, like, is this somebody that you want to report to the FTC or not? Do you want to, like, is it a valid claim? If it's like they're just having a bad day, like I had a hard time when I was like feeling into my intuition about like, I treat people the way that I would want to be treated. You know, I love the fact that this individual is creating a business and helping other people, but I don't agree with the way that they build their business, you know. So I asked myself that question. And I also did some research by looking them up on the BBB and then just kind of came to my own conclusion as to what I wanted to do in the situation. So I think that's very specific for everyone, each and every one of us. The other thing that I'll say is that the FTC is cracking down. Like, thankfully, they are cracking down on some of these marketers that are making these grandiose promises because people are like, they're desperate to get out of the matrix, right? And so they're taking the bait every time, and that bait is not true because you can't always, you know, the get rich schemes make a lot of money, but they don't really they don't really work, right?
Mhm.
Um, and we know this, especially if anybody's ever tried one. But like anything sustainable is going to take love and care and your heart and your soul and your energy on a consistent basis. Like it's building, it's creating, right? So there's that. But I just wanted to say too that when you're looking at purchasing something, just really look at the promises they're making you. Are they offering you an experience? Are they offering you progress? Are they offering you guidance? Or are they offering you, you know, how to make $1 million in 90 days? Right.
Yeah.
Because it's just it's not okay. And I'm actually thankful the FTC is getting involved because it's making those heartfelt entrepreneurs like you and I stand out a little bit more when we can use valid testimonials now because
Mhm.
now they've made it illegal to use misleading testimonials. So our actual testimonials will be a little bit more, you know, trusted because people stop listening to stuff. It's
Yeah.
like crying wolf, right? And then eventually you're just like, whatever. I don't even know. I don't know what to buy anymore. Everybody says these things, but who do I even listen to? Who do I even invest in? Right? This type stuff. So what's your thoughts on the FTC and the BBB as far as like just giving people recommendations of like you have to protect yourself, but as a consumer, I also feel responsible for protecting others to an extent. But that's my personal feeling. And with every person I work with, if I were to ever make a complaint, I would do a really hard soul searching as to before I did something like that. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, my thoughts are, because I know there's people out there that, they don't take accountability in anything that they do, and their ego really just is like, oh, it didn't work for me, and boom, they maybe go report. I don't necessarily see that as a good thing, right? But for example, someone like myself who has had this really, long experience that's taken a lot of energy. Of course, there's been some good lessons, but there's also been some heartache, and if I didn't have the support system, if I hadn't been working on myself personally, that could have taken me down such a bad path. That's the type of complaints I feel are valid. That we want to help stop people. We want to help this from happening again. And that's when I think this could be really good to go, and takes. I love that the FTC, they've set it up where it's very easy to do. You just could take like 10, 15 minutes. But I think you really need to have, like you said, a heartfelt conversation. Um, is this person been doing it for a long time? Are they continuing to do it? I know I'm not the only one. That's where I think it's valid because it's really going to help a lot of people. So that's my take on it. I wouldn't, if I had a bad experience with a company, I'm not running to the FTC, right? Like it really has to take some weight for me to do something like that. And yeah, and in this case, it was, and I'll just put that out there. It was the first time I've ever even thought about something like that, and in going back to your point about um, marketers, and the reason why I kind of shifted into more marketing than coaching, because I was more focused on the NLP coaching and more holistic coaching. And the whole reason why I started to pivot is because I realized for me to get clients, I need to market myself. And so it's interesting how coaches themselves, you kind of have to know how to market yourself. So in a way, you have to be a little bit of a marketer. Even if you're not a marketer, you don't want to call yourself a marketer, but for you to actually like have a successful business or whatever you deem successful, but if you want consistent clients, like there's only one way to do that, and it's marketing, right? And so I think that um yeah, is to, I'm not sure where I was trying to find the link of like, okay, why did I go there? But um I think, okay, I think it's this, is just knowing that, okay, is this marketing doing more harm than good? I think that's it. So is it doing more harm than good for me as a coach, if you're a coach, or as a marketer, whatever you are, whoever you are, is it doing more harm than good in the long run? Yeah.
Yeah, that's well said. That's well said. And yes, and in the just to touch up on that, we did talk about how, you almost have a product and then you have a marketing department, right? As a as a coach or whatever. And I do talk a little bit about that, like in my communities, which I'll mention in a moment. But yeah, there's just so much responsibility as a business owner, and we want to be fair and we want to be, we just want to be ethical. And we want to make sure that we're learning from ethical people and that we're applying something that is genuine and not, misleading anybody because
Mhm.
I would hate to give someone misinformation or something that could hurt their business, because I learned it from someone else. So, but to finalize, I do want to invite anybody listening to this into my community, which can be found at my website at www.lauraperry.com. It's called the Soulpreneurs Global Community, and that's where I'm just inviting soulpreneurs from all over the world to come in and connect. We get together live and we meet each other and we have discussions. And it is a beautiful support group. It's brand new. So, I mean, it is free, but it's like members are trickling in and it's almost like the space has been created for Soul Tribe to just meet each other, and they resonate so fast when someone else comes in, and people are asking questions and they are sharing where they're at on the journey. It's really amazing just to be able to hold this, sacred, safe container to continuously bring people from all over the world. Literally, I'm like amazed at um how united we all are, in community and how positive it can be and how supportive it can be. So I invite everybody into that community and also to jump into the TikTok challenge that I have. That's under my events page on my website. I do preach that social media is a tool, and when used as such, it can really help you get your message out there. It can help you um, find your tribe, right? Like everybody that has something to offer, there is somebody waiting to find you. And I created that challenge because TikTok is, in my opinion, really easy to use. There's a huge audience on there. Everybody is looking for the light. Everybody is looking for guidance, especially in this time right now. And I felt like that was one of the easiest ways to teach people how to just put your message out into the world. And when you can get yourself out of the way, and like Savannah said, just do it even if you don't feel ready. You will actually grow exponentially in a very short amount of time. And you're following and you'll meet some amazing people. So, Savannah, do you want to finalize and then offer? I know we want to send people to your website as well if they have any questions for you.
Yeah, one more final thought would be um, on the not feeling ready, just back to our point of not feeling like we know what we're doing. I think I think that's a beautiful thing is like, doing a video and you look at it and we're so hard on ourselves and oh, we don't like the way we look or oh, my hair is not perfect or whatever. And then if we can reprogram our mind to think that's exactly where I'm meant to be. In that, oh, if I don't know what I'm doing, that's actually perfect. That's when I need to post it. And so to reprogram our mind to know that every like these multimillionaires are even saying they still don't feel like they know what they're doing. It's because we're constantly upgrading, and that's the whole point of life is to feel that's actually if we feel like we know what we're doing constantly, then we're not growing. So yeah, and I'm open to having a conversation with someone if they're going through something similar, or if they need, a sounding board. I'm totally open to having, helping someone on a call. And if you're interested too, they can go to digitalstartupgrowth.com and they can go onto my email list and they can get some more information about how I'm helping people with marketing and getting their system set up online. And yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Savannah. And to everybody listening, I hope this conversation was valuable. And it's been a hard lesson learned for Savannah and I. So we're sharing this in a very heartfelt way. And, just we are totally compassionate for you and your success. And we're here to support you in any way we possibly can. So thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.